From the heart of West Africa, a crucial conversation is unfolding. Lomé, the capital of Togo, hosted the inaugural African Union Debt Conference, a defining moment as the continent is seeking solutions to one of its biggest economic burdens, public debt. I'm Kenneth Igbomo, and I'll bring you some of the highlights from the narratives weaved out from the African Union's Debt Conference in Lomé, Togo. With over $1 trillion in external debt, African countries are spending a lot just to service debt, with more than 30 countries spending more on debt servicing than public health. Africa stands at a crossroad. The African Union Debt Conference is not just about numbers, it's about sovereignty, sustainability, and the future of millions of Africans.
It is a privilege to address you today at this historical inaugural African Union Debt Conference under the theme Africa's Public Debt Management Agenda in Restoring and Safeguarding Debt Sustainability. I wish to begin by commending His Excellency Faure Gnassingbé, President of the Republic of Togo, and the African Union Commission for convening this vital platform at this defining inflection point in Africa's development journey. Excellencies, this conference could not be more timely. Across the continent, access to concessional finance is narrowing, while tariff escalations are weakening market access for African goods. For many of our countries, this translates into higher borrowing costs, reduced export revenues, and tighter budgets, at a time when fiscal expansion is essential for inclusive growth. Indeed, as we convene, Africa is not merely confronting a debt crisis, it is facing a development crisis, one where debt servicing competes directly with health, education, infrastructure, and the fundamental right to development. The question is, what kind of solution do we need, and how urgently can we deliver it? Let us start with the sobering facts. In 2024, Africa's total public debt shot up to $1.86 trillion US, with average debt to GDP ratio rising from 44.4% in 2015 to 66.7% today. Across the continent, more than 20 African countries are either already facing debt distress or on the brink. When debt repayments outweigh investments in health and education combined, we must question the sustainability and human cost of our fiscal path. Can we or should we accept the reality where repaying the debt takes precedence over protecting lives and nurturing human capital? Furthermore, it is unacceptable that today only 2 African countries are rated investment grade. Is it because that our fundamentals are so weak, or are we being measured by outdated methods and narrow perceptions that fail to account for Africa's potential? And if Africa, that holds 30% of the world's critical minerals, 60% of the arable land, and the youngest population on Earth, is not considered bankable, then who is? Yes, we need to provide the necessary capacity to countries to improve their ratings, but transparency is very key. This notwithstanding, Excellencies, we must also confront the reality of the changing global landscape. The international financial lifelines we once relied on, including the official development assistance, are fading. Today, 83% of USAID programs have been cancelled, and the traditional partners are tightening their budgets. Meanwhile, the cost of capital has surged, and the G20 Common Framework, unfortunately, remains slow, opaque, and creditor-biased. Faced with these headwinds, we have no choice but to chart a bold and principled new path.
I wish to further take this opportunity to thank the President of the Council of the Republic of Togo, His Excellency Mr. Faure Gnassingbé and his government, as well as the people of Togo, for the warm welcome and hospitality accorded to us, to us and all the delegations ever since we arrived in this beautiful city. Your acceptancy, Your Excellency, to host this first edition of the African Union Conference is the demonstration of your unwavering support and commitment to propel Africa in its next development stage as a prosperous and socially inclusive continent. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is with a deep sense of urgency and shared purpose that I stand before you today at this pivotal African Union Conference on Debt in Lomé. Our gathering here at the highest level of African leadership is a testament to the critical nature of the debt challenges confronting our continent and our collective resolve to address them head on. The theme guiding our discussions, Africa Public Debt Management Agenda, restoring and safeguarding debt sustainability is not just pertinent. It is a matter of economic survival and a prerequisite for realizing the Africa we want as envisioned in the Agenda 2063.
Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that Africa must assert its own voice in global debt discussions and champion reforms that enhance sustainability while considering our unique economic realities and opportunities. Transparency is key to rebuilding local and international investor confidence, reducing borrowing costs, and indeed strengthening public accountability. We must commit to responsible borrowing, ensuring that debt serves as a tool for development and prosperity. Borrowing should be legally sound and publicly disclosed, with a clear focus on growth-oriented investments rather than on consumption expenditure. It is true that Africa faces restrictive financing structures that fail to address our development and climate adaptation needs. Reform is overdue. Frankly speaking, reform is overdue. Africa's debt situation should not be broadly labeled as a crisis. Despite global shocks, only a limited number of nations have defaulted. Our economies have shown resilience, but inequitable global financial systems continue to limit our ability to invest in development. Zambia was the first country to restructure its debt under the G20 Common Framework, an experience that, despite complexities, delivered meaningful relief. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, if Africa is to become self-sufficient in financing our future, we must invest in our financial institutions so that they can facilitate development financing, regional crisis response, and debt restructuring. In conclusion, Zambia stands ready to collaborate with fellow African nations and key stakeholders across the world to transform debt management into a tool for scalable and indeed sustainable prosperity. The choices made at this conference will define our future, and together we can secure a financial system that serves our people and strengthens our continent for generations to come.
Ghana, like many of our peers and neighbors, has had to undergo a very painful restructuring exercise to restore macroeconomic stability and rebuild investor confidence. And so who better to speak on this theme than the Republic of Ghana? These facts are stark reminders that while debt can be a catalyst for transformation, it can also be the source of fiscal fragility and lost sovereignty if it is not well managed. And now I'll give you a reflection and lessons on Ghana's journey in debt restructuring. Ghana's debt history is emblematic of the broader African experience. In the early 2000s, under the HIPIC and MDRI initiatives, Ghana was able to slash its debt to GDP ratio from over 100% to under 30%. This unlocked significant fiscal space and allowed for investment in education, roads, and the health sector. Between 2006 and 2015, successive governments, including mine, that's in my first coming, strategically combined concessional and non-concessional financing to accelerate infrastructure development and social inclusion. Under my administration in 2015, Ghana entered into an IMF-supported extended credit facility program to restore fiscal discipline, particularly in the energy sector. However, in the years that followed, in a splurge of unrestrained borrowing, Ghana's debt to GDP ratio went from as low as 56.3% in 2016 to a peak of 90.7% in 2022. We faced surging borrowing costs and currency depreciation. And by 2023, interest payments alone consumed 47% of total government revenue, a level described by the World Bank as fiscally unsustainable. In 2024, through constructive engagement under the G20 Common Framework, Ghana reached a $5.4 billion debt restructuring deal with our bilateral creditors, providing essential breathing room. But the path to recovery continues to remain complex. Ghana's experience offers three key lessons. One, that timely and transparent engagement with the creditors matter. Delays only deepen the crisis. Then two, multilateral support must be flexible and must be aligned with our domestic development priorities. And three, sustainable debt is not just about debt to GDP ratio. It is about what the debt is used to finance and the governance that underpins that debt. And here, we leaders of Africa must take some responsibility for the debt trap in which our countries find themselves. In Ghana, over the last several years, there was an acceleration of debt accumulation, much of it going into budget support and consumption expenditure, and in a very poor governance environment. And so, what is the new debt agenda for Africa? If we're to shift from managing debt crisis to unlocking debt as a tool for development, then Africa must adopt a new public debt management agenda that is rooted in three foundational pillars. And the first one is transparency and accountability. Debt should serve the people, and this means strengthening parliamentary oversight, enhancing public debt audits, and promoting open budget systems. According to the IMF, less than 40% of African countries publish detailed debt reports. This must change. The second is productive, efficient, and responsible borrowing. Borrowing must be tied to high-impact projects that deliver tangible returns to our people. In Ghana, we're prioritizing value-added agriculture, renewable energy, road infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and health and education sectors. All these sectors yield multiplier effects in jobs, exports, and innovation. And the third is regional solidarity and global financial reform, the third pillar. And with this, Africa must speak with one voice to push for a fairer global financial rules. Credit rating agencies must adopt methodologies that reflect the structural reforms and the growth potential of African economies, not just penalize us for volatility that we did not create. Let us also build the capacity of African financial institutions such as the African Development Bank, the Afri-Exim Bank, the AFC, and the proposed African Monetary Fund to offer concessional financing tailored to Africa's development reality. So what is working and what must change? And in this I say innovation must guide our debt strategy. And I think Mr. Vilakazi and those who spoke before me spoke about it, Mr. Gatete. Debt for climate swaps can help countries finance resilience while easing repayment pressures. And Barbados has led the way in this, and Africa should learn and follow suit. Green and blue bonds must be scaled up across the continent to finance environmental protection, clean energy, and sustainable agriculture. Ghana is exploring these options alongside broadening the tax base, digitizing revenue collection, and enhancing domestic capital markets to reduce dependency on external borrowing.
At the opening address by the host and president of Council of the Togolese Republic, Farid Gnassingbé, who iterated that the conference must ask fundamental questions about what truly constitutes sustainable debt. He further stressed that current methodologies often underestimate revenues and Africa must rethink debt management. One of the most anticipated conversations on the debt agenda is how to enhance credit ratings in Africa, a topic often overlooked but yet central to the debt debate. Africa's poor credit ratings often means higher borrowing costs, even for countries with solid fundamentals. Panelists point to the perceived biases in global rating methodologies.
We are very happy as Moody's to have been invited to speak to this important subject of the debt. And we welcome already the collaboration that we have with the African Union and the UN Secretariat and all the stakeholders in this very important subject. This is important to really focus on what is a credit rating first. It's the ability and willingness of an issuer, being a sovereign or any other issuer, to pay its debt, and it's just that, it's nothing else. At Moody's, and I think it's true as well for the other rating agencies, all our methodologies are public, available on our website, and we welcome these opportunities to continue to explain what is a rating, what we do, and why it's important to continue in that vein. This is why we welcome the creation of the new agency. For our methodology, we always look at them and do iteration when we think something needs to be embedded. So, for example, there are two elements that I would like to stress. The globality of the rating scale is very important for us because investors across the world, they have a matrix that is really useful to calibrate the risk for them. So a B2 credit in Latin America, in Africa, East Asia, will be to be able to put into the portfolio that they want to build. It's also a signal for the banking system when they want to give loans. So the globality of the scale is very important. And the methodology through changes, for example, when there was the Arab Spring in 2011, we decided to modify the way we integrate political risk into our methodology. We do often request for comments for the investor community and even the issuers to comment on the proposal of change in our methodology. And then we implement the methodology and we, by iteration, I would say, improve or develop the methodologies. An important point also to signal is that methodologies for credit ratings are just the first step. It's more a framework for us to be consistent in our approach. So we think that some elements have the same effect. So, for example, if you have a weak balance of payment, a country is exposed to a risk of balance of payment crisis. And therefore, the external vulnerability is something we have to look at. And so the methodologies, through all the question it asks, we are sure to have a consistent approach when we look at a particular credit. Now, the important element is that this is just the first step. We look at all information that is available. We don't say that our methodology captures all the situations, but we, through the rating committee where we discuss, or the analysis when we discuss the credit or the report that we publish, we mention some elements that are important for the positioning of the credit rating that may not be in the methodology. I'll stop there, but this is important. It's a continuous process to try to improve our methodologies.
So Aurélien said that methodology is a first step, but it is an important step because somehow it helps determine the rating, the way countries are assessed. We have been concerned about the methodologies, indeed, that credit rating agencies use, particularly the lack of incorporation of social indicators in credit rating assessments. Now, we've seen credit rating agencies increasingly look at governance-related indicators, look at the potential economic and social costs of climate change, for example, and their implications for credit worthiness. The problem is that these are inconsistently applied and they are not sufficient. Credit rating assessments remain largely focused on business-friendly policies, measures, leaving aside some of the longer-term human rights-based, gender-sensitive, SDG-related social and environmental indicators that could provide a more comprehensive and fairer picture of the development trajectory of a state. I've heard the discussion about productive investments, but if there's anything that we've learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, it is that the quality of and access to health, education, social protection systems, and the labor conditions in those sectors directly impact workforce productivity, labor supply, and could eventually lead to long-term loss of economic growth and of the worsening of debt problems down the road, which is why we really focus or emphasize the need to consistently incorporate social and human rights related indicators into the assessment.
On this very important issue about methodologies, I think actually colleagues have very much stressed the fact that this is a first step, but a very important step. The reality is, of course, the methodologies are the type of sort of processes that the credit rating agencies are using to start the credit rating process. Of course, we can come back to what follows after. But what I want to say there is we have realized at Africa at least, but also with some of our partners, that there has been a lot of misunderstanding among all actors that are involved. It's not only credit rating agencies, but also among governments, but also other type of stakeholders. So what we felt was needed was to very much put in place an initiative, an approach that allows to, for those actors to engage constructively, understand each other, because a country cannot claim or actually sort of expect to have better ratings so long as they don't understand how the rating process works and how they can leverage the process and how they can make the most out of it and engage constructively and positively with the credit rating agencies.
When I come to the issues you mentioned about methodology, APRM has been on the forefront, mentioning and identifying some accuracies in rating actions that has been given to many of African countries. We can mention some of the cases that were, that were stated in Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, and many other cases, and we issue opinions, describing why we think rating action is inaccurate and unfair. And we have engaged, rating agencies as well in that regard. They put forward their reasons as to why, the rating actions have been taken, but we also, pinpoint those issues. But the unfortunate part here, I should state, Hannah, is that many of African countries had their grievances about the rating actions. But unfortunately, Africa doesn't have any platform to take these grievances forward. They remain grievances, and they are not, we do not have a continental-wide regulatory framework. Even the local framework, which such as, some of the security exchange commissions do not have the mandate to oversee the work of credit rating agencies in the continent. So that has always been the challenge.
Stefan Akaya, the Secretary General of the Togo Ministry of Finance, shares his biggest takeaways from the conference.
The big takeaway for today is that we have a common position on how we can resolve the debt issues. We have a common position, and we design on this declaration of Lomé what will be the tools that we will use to face those different matters for all the countries. And also, what is very important in this conference is to see that all the countries are okay with that. They all say that it is the right way to go. We will continue to have a strong leadership on that, and we are asking the Conference Union to continue to pose action that will change the context, and that will permit our countries to have sufficient resources to finance their economy.
In Lomé, Africa has begun a crucial conversation not just about debt, but about dignity, about shaping systems that reflect African priorities. As one speaker said, we're not asking for favors, we're demanding fairness. I'm Kenneth Ibomo. Thanks for watching.